Carissimi fratelli e sorelle, alle 21:37 il nostro amatissimo Santo Padre Giovanni Paolo II è tornato alla casa del Padre.
With these words 12 years ago, the world learned about the death of Pope John Paul II. For more than 10 minutes after his death was announced, tens of thousands of faithful gathered at St. Peter's Square and simply erupted in a continuous applause. Unlike the usual prayers that are recited after a person's death for the eternal repose of their soul, the first prayer recited after the Holy Father's death was the Te Deum, a prayer of gratitude and a hymn of praise to God. Everyone knew that he had died a holy man. Many of us remember St. John Paul II very well. Others have only heard of him. Undoubtedly, however, he had a tremendous impact on the Church and the world we live in today.
Holy Father's contributions in the life of the Church are just extraordinary. And then the way that he went around and faced injustices and the dictators in the world. I always say that he went to give the last rites to all the dictators. He went to Marcos and Duvalier and Pinochet, and all of the dictatorships fell after he visited those countries and inspired the people with a sense of their own dignity and destiny.
His work somehow to announce the gospel and how the gospel alone could change history. Practically his proclamation, "Do not be afraid," is what made communism fall.
He incarnated the mission or the understanding that the Church really, as the Second Vatican Council had called it, the Church was to be a beacon of light in front of the world. Therefore, lumen gentium. And this is why I think that he understood that it was the role of the Church to begin a new evangelization.
In 1978, at 58 years old, Cardinal Karol Joseph Wojtyła of Krakow, Poland, was elected the 264th leader of the Roman Catholic Church. The first non-Italian to assume the papacy in 455 years, he took the name of John Paul, following the lead of his predecessor, and he had one of the longest papacies in the history of the Church. He began his pontificate with the invitation to open wide the doors to Christ, and wherever he went, he brought Christ to the world.
The Holy Father brought the Church to places where the Church was not there.
He didn't live in the clouds. He was aware of the crisis of the Church, the crisis of the world, and he saw solutions. Well, the solution is to evangelize.
John Paul left the Vatican more than 1,500 times for official trips, visited 129 countries, and traveled more than 600,000 miles. That's like going around the globe 30 times.
He came to the papacy at a time when the Church was facing many challenges, and through his many trips throughout the world, he made himself present to the Catholic people as no other pope in the history of the world has done.
John Paul II tirelessly encouraged everyone, especially the youth, saying, "Dare to be saints." Young people, on the other hand, clung to the Pope because they found him a credible witness, not just because he was the Pope, but because they saw him as someone who lived with God and allowed God to live in him.
And we met with him, and my children were small. They were moving all the time. And he looked at the children, and then he turned back to me and will pass his hand like that. He said, La mama, and would caress me with a tenderness that is amazing. Really, when you were with him, you felt the presence of God, and you didn't want to leave him.
Seeing John Paul II in his old age, in his illness, but he looked full of life, he was full of spirit, it moved me so much that this man could be doing so many other things, but he cares so much about all the young people, and I felt particularly that he loved me so much that he was there.
He prayed like if he was carrying the world on his shoulder.
On his shoulder. This was the impression, both before the Mass and after the Mass, and with an intensity that I never saw anyone before.
Holiness was a central theme in the teachings of Pope John Paul II as a message that convinces without the need for words. He filled heaven with saints, beatifying 1,338 and canonizing 482 saints.
He underscored the fact that we are all called to holiness, and therefore canonized and beatified more people than any other pope in the history of the Church.
He sold in us the hope of eternal life. He told people that heaven was within our reach.
Among his many accomplishments, John Paul II will mostly be remembered as the Pope who began World Youth Days, an event that drew millions of young people who came from all over the world to listen to his voice, to discover their identity, and to understand their mission in the Church.
The beginning of World Youth Day has been such a grace for the Church. Millions and millions of young people have had the opportunity to come together to be reaffirmed in their faith by the presence of their brothers and sisters from all over the world.
It's interesting that he wanted to be remembered as the Pope of the family, but even though the reality is that he, probably for my generation, he remains much more the Pope who called young people to the Church, who gave hope to young people.
Having children is possible with the Lord. That the only reason I can have children is because Jesus Christ is with me. And all that, the only reason I know this is because of St. John Paul II. Because he has dedicated so much of his life to saying, married people, you are important.
The first Pope to visit a modern-day synagogue, the first to walk into a Protestant church, and the first to walk into a mosque, Karol Wojtyła made present the spirit of the Good Shepherd in his unequivocal love and respect for every person, irrespective of religion, culture, or social status.
He came to where I was and he looked directly at me and he gave me a blessing, and I immediately fell to my knees and I crossed myself, and I just had this reaction, and I didn't really know what it meant, but I knew that he looked at me.
His legacy continues, it endures today, because if you want to see where is Pope John Paul II today, well, we can look at families, young families who are having children. We can look at young men who have entered the seminary and who have been enkindled, who have been touched by his courage, by the vibrancy of his words.
Even as his body grew weaker and more frail by the day, from his deathbed, John Paul remained a steadfast witness of the gospel of life and of God's redemptive love in the face of human suffering.
And he presented a way of living suffering and sickness completely new. He was living in his flesh this of living the sickness without shame.
Ultimately, through his witness, the world met the beauty of Christ, saw the youthfulness of the church, and discovered that heaven is within our reach.
So I'm delighted that tonight we have an opportunity just to reflect upon the great gift of John Paul II. And of course, one of his great gifts to the church was establishing the Redemptoris Seminaries that we are celebrating here tonight.